Right, I'm going to use Notepad to write the first program. Now the first thing any C program needs is a main function. This function represents the entry point into the program as far as the C compiler is concerned. It's a function like any other, but it's treated specially for that purpose. As a function, it has a return type, in this case int, and int stands for integer. Following the name, you have these parentheses. Now within the parentheses you might have a number of parameters. In this case there aren't any, and sometimes you'll see the word void here, which just means that, again, the same thing, there are no parameters, but it's pretty redundant, so we tend to leave it out. Following that, we have these curly brackets, and the curly brackets provide the boundaries for the code that actually represents the function's body. All the things in here might be, changing variable values, creating variables, calling other functions, and so on, and finally returning some value. In this case, we're simply returning the value of 0. The semicolon here is the terminator for a statement. So if you have multiple statements on a single line, you simply terminate each one with a semicolon. Now this program doesn't do much, but it's a valid C program, so we can go and save it, return to the command prompt, and compile it. Again, as I said, I'm using the Microsoft C compiler, or the C and C++ compiler. And the command is cl, and then you type the name of the source file, and you hit enter, and it compiles it. Now, there's a bunch of text that just popped through the screen there, and if we scroll up, we can see that it tells us it's a certain type of compiler, and it linked the code, and it generated a first.exe machine code file. Now that's the executable that contains the actual program that we can run. So we can run first.exe, and it does nothing. But it worked fine. So now the next thing to do is return to the source file and make this program do something interesting. And the first thing we can do is use the printf function to print a friendly message. Now printf is a pretty amazing little function, but in this case all we're doing is asking it to print the friendly hello world message. The /n here is called an escape sequence, and it represents the new line. And this is a special character that the command prompt will interpret as a new line character, and will accordingly insert that new line into the command prompt's display. Of course, the compiler knows nothing about printf. This is just a library function that we need to tell it where to find it, and we do so by hash including the standard IO header file. Now hash includes, literally, or at least conceptually, includes the contents of this other file into the program, as if you'd copied and pasted it in there. Now that's about it. So we can save that program, return again to the command prompt, type cl first.c, compile it again, works great. Now we can go first.exe, run it, and there we get our friendly message. If we return to the program and remove that /n, that escape sequence, you can see the difference that it makes in this case. And here you see now there's no longer a new line following the message. Now you may have noticed that it's pretty hard to follow the command line output because of the verbosity, or all the noise and the extra information that the compiler emits to the command prompt. Now one thing you can do there is to clean that up a little bit by using the /no logo switch. And what that does is it just emits what you need to in order to make sure your program actually compiled successfully. And there we go. Now another thing you can do, which is quite useful, is to use the W4 switch. And what that does is it increases the level of diagnostics, or the warnings that the compiler prints out for possible errors in your code. This is generally a good habit to adopt, because you'll quickly catch a lot of errors that might plague you later on if you tend to ignore them. And finally, the other switch that is quite useful is the /tp switch. Now what this does is it tells the compiler, hey, assume that this code is C++ code rather than C code. By default, the compiler will see the .c extension on the source file and assume it's rightly C code. But if you compile it as C++ code, what that does is it gets the compiler's C++ engine to give it a much better look. There'll be better type checking, better error checking, and it also ensures that your code is a lot more portable, and you can later on use it inside of a C++ program. Again, everything worked fine. We can run first.exe. Everything is as expected. And there's our first program.